Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Sports Department Podcast. I am Stephen Bologna, joined alongside Jesse Norman, and it is Thursday, March 25th, and the NBA trade deadline is officially behind us. A lot of big names are on the move to new cities, some unexpected moves, and some players that we thought were going to get dealt, aka Kyle Lowry or Lonzo Ball. They did not get moved. We did have a buzzer beater trade with Victor Oladipo going to the Miami Heat, leaving the Houston Rockets. The Orlando Magic also very active in the trade deadline today, blowing it up, going into a rebuild. But first off, Jesse, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Can't complain too much. Got a lot of trades coming in, so a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, let's jump right into it. The one that shocked us all, about 3:02 it came in. Victor Oladipo heading to the Miami Heat in exchange for Kelly Olynyk, Avery Bradley, and a 2022 pick swap. The Rockets, thought to be the key of their Harden deal, is now in Miami just after about 2 months.
Yeah. So Bobby Marks put on Twitter, former NBA GM and NBA worker, he said 10 teams texted him and said, why didn't the Rockets just keep LeVert?
Yeah.
And I think that's what it comes down to. The Rockets really, really love their scouting department, I guess, for whatever reason. I can't name the last really good Houston Rockets player that they've drafted off the top of my head. I mean, they have been, trading them obviously with the Morey, administration going on. But it's bad for the Rockets. I don't think there's any other way to put it. They could have had Karis LeVert. They could have had Jared Allen. They said they didn't like either of those pieces. They did not like those players. And while they liked Oladipo was loud about it from the start. He did not see himself in Houston long term. He never shied away from that. This wasn't a thing of like, oh, they got him and then they started to lose some games. And then he said from the beginning, I don't know if I want to be here. Immediately, first day, turned down an extension from them.
Yeah.
So getting Avery Bradley, Kelly Olynyk, and a 2022 swap for a guy that was supposed to be the centerpiece for a trade that netted the Nets a top 5 player in the NBA.
Yeah.
I mean, you can only take this as a loss as of right now for the Rockets. And good get for Miami. I really hope for their sake that Oladipo is that player that they want him to be, because he wants max money. He's said that numerous times. He said it everywhere. He's put it out in quotes. He said it in Indy. He said it in Houston. I guarantee you he's going to say it in Miami. He feels he is a max value player. And at this point, that's a $30 million plus guy at that point. So
he's injury prone too.
Absolutely. And you can make the argument, he's never been the same since that patellar tendon, injury. And you can look at it as, well, maybe every year he's getting healthier, but there's also this fact that I don't think a lot of people are saying about that he might never get back there. He's probably not going to. And in reality, I don't want to be a Victor Oladipo hater to any degree, but he has that 1 year in Indiana.
Yeah.
And other than that, what really else do we have? So the Heat bought him for incredibly low. I mean, they wanted to get rid of Kelly Olynyk no matter what. Avery Bradley gets hurt all the time as well. The 2022 swap, it's kind of a throwaway.
Yeah, it is.
So good for the Heat. I hope it works out for them. If not, they're going to be paying. If they pay Oladipo in this offseason, like that's it. That's the team. Butler, Oladipo, Bam. That's it. That's what you're paying. You can kind of try to fill in the rest with some minimum, contract guys, and Pat Riley will get some people here and there. But that is your team. So they better hope that it is a finals contending team. And as of right now, from the Oladipo that I've seen, I don't think this pushes them into the conversation with the Nets and 76ers. I think they are still in that range with the Bucks, where it's like, yeah, if they catch a team slipping, they maybe can get a couple wins. But I don't know if this year, outside of the bubble, if Miami will be able to go on a run to the NBA Finals.
Yeah, I don't think they're getting past the Nets. But, I mean, you look at this trade for Houston, I mean, the whole Harden deal, the Nets become championship favorites. Not the 76ers. The Cavaliers get their new starting center in Jared Allen with Andre Drummond expected to be bought out. And, I mean, Karis LeVert was out for a little while with his, obviously his personal health. But he comes back and he's, like we talked about before, he hit a dagger last night.
Against Detroit. 111, 109, 4 seconds left on the clock. It's a step back three to bury the game.
And now you sit here with Houston. We lost 20 straight. We just traded away the best player we got back from the Harden deal. And for what? We have 4 first-round picks maybe to show for it from the Harden deal. That's really it.
Yeah, and I mean, you have a bunch of swaps, but at this point, when is Houston going to be good again? And there was talks of they put him to bed pretty quick, but some people were like, well, are they going to buy out John Wall? Is there a chance that they could buy out John Wall's contract? Those were put to bed pretty quick. I don't think first off, Houston doesn't want to do that. Second off, John Wall does not want to leave that much money on the table. So no way. But no, for Houston, as of right now, and this could change in the future. After the Durant, Irving, Harden era, the Nets could slide back down the standings. They've clearly pushed all their chips to the middle of the table. They said, we want a championship in the next 2-3 years. So maybe after that, they could be looking at some high draft picks. But as of right now, the Rockets trade for Harden, it's not looking pretty. It's not looking good at all.
No, and they're currently sitting second to last in the West. I want to go to a team that's second to last in the East, and the Orlando Magic blowing it up. Evan Fournier, Nikola Vucevic, and Aaron Gordon all traded today. Gordon to the Nuggets, Vucevic to the Bulls, and Fournier to the Celtics. Do you think this was the right move to blow it? I mean, they've been a playoff team the past couple of years.
Yeah, Orlando was kind of in that area where they were making the playoffs. They were always a viable team, but they were never an upper echelon team. They were never a team that was actually going to compete for a championship or even, try to get to an Eastern Conference Finals. I think this was the right move for them. They needed to break it all down. That being said, I do like most of the deals that they got back. I think Gary Harris, RJ Hampton, and a first rounder for Aaron Gordon is a pretty good deal. Gary Harris you could probably flip him in the offseason. He had to be in there for salary purposes. But RJ Hampton, a guy with a lot of potential, very athletic. Getting the first rounder is big. I love the deal to Chicago for Vucevic. They get back Wendell Carter, who can grow into a really good center, is already a pretty solid center, but he has definite room to grow. I expect them to buy out Otto Porter. And then, they also get 2 first rounders from Chicago.
And Chicago's bad.
Yeah, well, and they want to make the playoffs and they want to be better and they want to do all those things. But there is a definite possibility that Chicago is bad in the next couple of years, and those first rounders could be good for them. Chicago has been a team consistently since the Rose era has ended that they've been a mess. So they're trying to get back on track, but there's a definite possibility that the wheels fall off the wagon there. And one thing for the Bulls wise, I don't love the fit of Vucevic and Lauri Markkanen together. They don't play defense. They're neither of them are rim protectors. At this point in the NBA, Markkanen is a stretch 5. He can't really play the 4. The 4 is covered by guys who are athletic, can shoot, defend. That's not Markkanen. At this point, he's a 5 in the NBA, and he can't play next to Vucevic. So I definitely expect them to try to make them work. I don't think they're going to. And then probably in the offseason, look for them to move Markkanen. But I think overall, this was good for Orlando. I would have liked to see them get a little bit more value for Fournier, but I think the general consensus on Fournier was that he's not a top tier talent. He should at most be your sixth man. And from the Celtics perspective, this was their move, and
this is
and they
it.
got they got him, and they traded Tice for Mo Wagner, and you go in after this, and the Celtics were a team that was linked to Vucevic, they were linked to Aaron Gordon, and then they ended up with the worst player out of the Orlando Magic three that they traded. So good for the Magic. I think good for Chicago. I like the move for Denver. Gordon gives them a fantastic defender. Celtics wise, I don't love it. I really don't.
I mean, Evan Fournier is not going to tip the scale to get you to the championship.
Yeah, and then you trade Tice, who, Tice isn't. He's not going to do anything spectacular, but he's solid. He can make threes. He can get you a dunk here and there. He's a solid playmaker. And then you trade him for Mo Wagner.
Yeah.
Who? Why? Like, just why? I feel like Wagner is
3 times already in his career.
I just feel like Wagner is a significantly worse player than Tice. And I could see if they're maybe, wanting to go small ball, so they unload Tice kind of for nothing. But I just feel like Tice would have, a little bit more value as a rotation player than a player like Wagner, who's probably not really going to play for you.
Yeah, no. I mean, maybe they went youngness factor. Wagner is pretty young. But, I mean, for the Magic here, they now build around Markelle Fultz when healthy. I'm a big fan of Jonathan Isaac. I think
absolutely.
He's got potential.
Well, and now they get Wendell Carter back. I think they're out on Bamba. I think they're done, mostly for the most part done with him.
He healthy?
But I don't even know. I really couldn't even tell you, because even when he is healthy, they don't play him.
Yeah.
So I think they're pretty done. But look, if they don't like Bamba and they know Bamba isn't their center for the future, that's fine. They went out and got Wendell Carter, who can be their center for the future. So they now have 3 young pieces at the very least, and they've got first round picks. The one from the Nuggets, they now have 2 from Chicago. They have guys that they can go out and get. And if there's, maybe a prospect that they like at the top of the draft that they don't feel like they're in a position where they can grab them, they can trade assets. They can do those things. Or if they, build up this young core, let's say Isaac, Fultz, and Carter have all taken another step forward next year, kind of how, Chicago is right now, they can go out and get a guy like Vucevic sent to Chicago. They can go out and get a veteran guy with some of these picks and kind of fit their timeline a little bit better, because they were supremely loyal to Gordon. They were very loyal to Vucevic. They were, very loyal to Fournier. But that time, that era, that chapter, it needed to close. It was clear they ran that course. They did what they could with those guys. But it's time for this Fultz, Jonathan Isaac era to fully come in and to phase that out.
Yeah, I mean, Gordon and Vucevic have been brought up in trade talks probably over the past 2 years. So glad to see them finally realizing, and especially this being a lost season already for them, just blow it up. Let's head up north here, or maybe even to Florida if you want. Under the radar player, Norman Powell. Potentially a net link there. He's heading to Portland in exchange for Gary Trent and Rodney Hood. And I don't know if you saw this. Every player named Gary in the NBA today was traded.
That's hilarious. I did not know that.
Gary Clark was in another trade.
Yeah, wow. Interesting.
But Powell, I mean, he heads to Portland to play with Dame and CJ.
Powell is a really good player. I don't know if he necessarily fits in Portland. I'm interested to see that. I mean, at that point, if they bring him off the bench, it works. You have Carmelo, and then you have him there, and that's a lot of scoring off your bench. They also might start him, kind of run a 3-guard lineup. It's an interesting move. I like Gary Trent Jr. He is a sharpshooter. He's gotten better progressively every single year. But I also like what the Raptors did. They knew they're going to be priced out of Norman Powell. He is, given the right role, he is a 20-plus point per game scorer. He could be, if you bring him off the bench, he's probably a perennial sixth man of the year contender as long as he stays healthy. He's a good player. And they know they needed to move off him because they weren't going to be able to afford him. So that's good. They get back Gary Trent Jr., who's a good player. And Rodney Hood, the injuries have really done a number on Hood. But I like the move for the Trailblazers. I would have liked to see them, maybe target a little bit different style of a player, maybe a wing, more so than a guard. But, Portland clearly feels like they have something this year. We don't even know if Powell's going to resign there. We don't know if they can even afford him. This might entirely be a rental, but is Norman Powell better than Trent Jr.? Absolutely. He is. There's no question about it. So they feel like they have a chance this year, and you can't really fault them with the Lakers being hurt and not being able to make a move, and the Clippers, not really knowing what they're doing. The West kind of does have this open feel to it.
And I think, you talk about the Raptors, the biggest headline for them today is that they did not trade Kyle Lowry. Reports say that they were engaged in serious talks with the Lakers and Heat. Lakers didn't want to give up Taylor Horton-Tucker. The Heat did not want to give up Tyler Herro. And it seems
I don't
a foregone conclusion. Lowry's traded.
I don't know what exactly the deal was, but there were also multiple Philly reporters that said the deal for Lowry was on the 1 yard line. That it was there were reports that he was expected, like he thought he was going to Philly at certain points, and then trade talks broke down, which is fair if what's being reported, what Toronto wanted for Lowry of 2 first-round picks, Tybal, and Tyrese Maxey. That's way too. I'd cut that asking price in half. First round pick, probably one of either Maxey or Tybal, and then Lowry probably has to agree to an extension. But that was also a thing that came into play. Teams didn't know if Lowry was willing to re-sign. Also, they don't know what he's going to sign for at what number. He is 35 years old. He is making $30 million this year, and he might still want, a 2-year extension worth $50 million. He hasn't really lost a step yet. We don't know if he's going to next year or, the year after. It's kind of a deal with Chris Paul where teams kept saying, oh, well, you can't trade the Paul contract because by the end of it, he's going to be bad. Well, he's still playing at a very high level.
Yeah. And
Kyle Lowry continues to play at that high level. So it's not this crazy idea that Lowry's going to want $20, $25 million plus because he still is that same player that he's been. But my takeaway is the Lakers got to be really, really high on Taylor Horton-Tucker.
Yeah.
They have to be because they were willing to offer Dennis Schroeder. They were willing to offer Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. But then Horton-Tucker is what stopped it. That's interesting to me because while I'm not the biggest Tyler Herro fan, you can make the argument for Herro's potential. You can make the argument he had huge implications in the playoffs. He was a big piece of that rotation. Taylor Horton-Tucker, he's young and, maybe in the future he can definitely, be a good player, but
he's shown nothing.
If you're already offering up Dennis Schroeder and you're already offering up Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, I don't think the thing that should stop the deal is Taylor Horton-Tucker. If you're offering Taylor Horton-Tucker and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and then they come in and say they want Dennis Schroeder, I can understand why that stops the talks. I can understand if Kentavious Caldwell-Pope stops the talks because he's a good defender and plays significant minutes. But Taylor Horton-Tucker, that really, I really don't get it. I really don't.
And for the Lakers, I mean, we heard reports earlier. LeBron James is out another month to a month and a half.
Another 4
They
to 6 weeks.
they needed a playmaker, especially Anthony Davis is out too. And like you said, I mean, they're sticking with Taylor Horton Tucker. I mean, Lowry's averaging 17 and 7 so far this year. It's his birthday today too, funny enough. So he almost got traded back to his hometown in Philly. But again, like you said, both Shams and Woj reported that the deal was right there. But
yeah, multiple times deals were right there. They had deals set almost with 3 different teams, and they didn't pull the trigger. But they obviously thought Lowry's value was higher than what they were being offered. But now if you're Toronto, you really need to hope that he re-signs, or you're kind of letting him walk for nothing, which I guess is fine because he's an all-time great for Toronto. He helped them win the championship. He is, at this point, he's been Mr. Toronto for a while. So if you let him walk, you let him decide where he wants to go, that's fine. He's got the ring. You guys did all that. But you would like to kind of get something. Philly was offering some young pieces and probably at least a pick. And Miami was offering some young pieces. And, LA wasn't offering necessarily young pieces, but Dennis Schroeder and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, you can flip those into something else. There will be a team that would give you a first rounder for Dennis Schroeder. So we'll see. Maybe they have some plans for Lowry in the future, or they plan to sign and trade, something like that. But very interesting that he wasn't moved.
And it appears that the Raptors are just kind of falling apart internally. I mean, I don't know if you heard, Siakam apparently said some bad things to Nick Nurse that apparently went like beyond cursing. So they said players had to hold him back, and they're 18 and 26 at the moment, and
they're not playing. No, they're not playing great. They're not playing great by any stretch. And even if at that point they hold Lowry and they say no, we really want to go for it one more year, we really want to try for it, you don't trade Norman Powell. You don't. You don't get a younger player in Gary Trent Jr. and trade a 20-point per game kind of guy. So it's interesting in Toronto. I'm not going to question the front office there just because Masai Ujiri is one of the better executives. So I think they probably have a longer term plan, looking out here. But, their asking price for Lowry was a little too high. That being said, if the Lakers make that trade for Lowry, I think the West is at that point locked. I really do. I think you're looking at nobody in the West, I think, can compete with that at that point.
And, speaking of the West, I mean, we have the other LA team that made a trade that was a little confusing to me. The Clippers acquire Rajon Rondo in exchange for Lou Williams. And I mean, Lou Williams is a dynamic scorer off the bench. And
I think the thing for the Clippers is they don't need more scoring. Lou Williams is a great scorer. He's a great sixth man, but they have evolved past needing that type of player. They desperately needed a point guard. They desperately needed a playmaker. Rondo is that, but also I worry about his fit with this team strictly because he still really can't shoot.
Not at all.
And Paul George is a very good shooter, and Kawhi Leonard is a very good shooter, especially in the mid range. But they prefer to play, Zubac at the 5. They prefer to play, traditional centers. If you play a traditional center and Rajon Rondo together at the same time, your spacing isn't great. I also heard reports that there was a potential trade. They were looking at trading Marcus Morris, which I thought was a huge mistake if they did. Luckily, they didn't.
Nick Legend.
I think it's interesting that Atlanta got 2 second rounders as well for Rondo.
Yeah.
Because if you put them next to each other, Lou Williams is at this point, I believe, the better player.
I agree.
So, fit-wise, what they needed a defensive point guard who can play make. So they paid a little bit premium for that. But you would have liked to see them get a better point guard. You would have liked to see them, go out and get a Lonzo Ball, go out and get a guy who's actually a playmaker and a shooter. That being said, Rondo does always show up in the playoffs. So, we can judge it maybe a little bit more there. I don't think we're going to see the effects of this trade right away.
And now you bring up Lonzo Ball, another one that was highly regarded in trade talks. And the Pelicans, they're holding on to him, not trading him.
They have to match whatever contract he's going to get, right? They can't let him hit restricted free agency and just leave, because he is a player with value. He is having a career year. This was when his value was going to be at the highest.
Yeah.
I really don't understand them not trading him, especially because so many teams allegedly were interested. The New York Knicks were interested. The Clippers were interested. A lot of teams were interested in this guy. And it's been reported numerous times that they don't see him being part of their future. If you don't see him as being part of your future, you need to move him.
Yeah. For anything. I mean, I know that the Knicks, I know, were really interested, which tells me that the Pelicans offer or want for return was probably pretty high. But, Lonzo, like you said, this is his career year for him. He's been really bad in the past. I mean, that's why the Lakers moved him.
Injury concerns too. He's been hurt a lot.
Yeah, and honestly, if a team sees this kind of career year, they'll throw not the house at him, but they'll throw a pretty good contract at him, and he's going to leave. And you could have traded him and got some assets back. I mean, the Pelicans still aren't an amazing team. I mean, Zion and Brandon Ingram are great, but you kind of want Alonzo to come into that role of your true point guard, and he just hasn't.
Well, and they also have the Bledsoe trade and the Adams deal have both worked out terribly for them.
Yeah.
So
they were looking to move Bledsoe, I thought.
They were looking to move both of them. Allegedly, they were trying to include Bledsoe in a Lonzo Ball deal if they had to try to get back some salary. But obviously, Ball wasn't traded. But he is a restricted free agent, so they can match whatever he gets and sign him. It's just, again, they've said they don't see a future with him. So, yeah, you can match his contract and then try to trade him. But that's also harder because then his cap number's up. If you were trying to get young assets and trying to get picks, this was the time to do it, because this is when his contract matches up with those younger players that you could get.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of the Pelicans, they did make a move on the deadline, trading almost Brooklyn native JJ Reddick to the Dallas Mavericks.
And players are not happy about this in New Orleans. Josh Hart put on Twitter about how messed up it was because everybody knew Reddick wanted to be near his family. He said it before. He wanted to be near his family. He wanted to get bought out. He wanted to be, in New York. He wanted to be in Brooklyn, maybe Philly. He just wanted to be around the area of the Northeast.
Yeah.
And they sent him to Dallas. And I could get the deal from a perspective of like, well, if you got something back.
Yeah.
But they didn't. This kind of felt like, David Griffin was kind of being a little spiteful here. And players don't like that.
No.
Because at the end of the day, Josh Hart and Zion and all, they might play for the Pelicans and, they might play under David Griffin and under that brand. But at the end of the day, players talk, and players talk about organizations that do them right and do them wrong. We look at Boston. Boston has had incredible talent that they've acquired over the year. They've all left.
Yeah.
Al Horford asked, oh, hey, can you release me and we'll work out a pay cut and all that. And then he left. He dipped. Gordon Hayward left. Kyrie Irving, they traded for him, left. All these guys that get to Boston go there. They don't like the culture. They want to leave.
Yeah.
If this is the culture that you're building in New Orleans, where a guy clearly wants to go to a specific place and you're not even really worried about what you get back for him, why do the deal? Like, you're just making yourself look bad. For Dallas, I think this is them saying, hey, we messed up on the Seth Curry deal. We need another shooter here. And Reddick, he's still a good shooter. He's not the player that he was at one point, but he's still solid. He can still play. I expect him to show up to Dallas. I don't expect him to, demand a buyout or anything like that. That's not the type of player he is. But very, very interesting move from David Griffin and the Pelicans that I feel like, might leave some players with a bad taste in their mouth.
Yeah, and I mean, especially on a team that has a lot of young pieces with, like Lonzo Ball, restricted free agent next year. Couldn't want to move his way out. But you bring up the buyout market, and Reddick did not hit the buyout market, but we're expecting Andre Drummond to hit that market along with LaMarcus Aldridge. Now, I saw before Aldridge is expected to go to the Heat. I don't know if
yes, I saw that they are. He said he will take into account several teams before he decides. But they didn't list, I believe, any other teams. I assume it's the usual suspects, Boston, the Lakers, probably Miami. I doubt Brooklyn's involved because they already got Blake, so I don't think they want Aldridge. But I'm expecting him to sign with Miami, yeah.
Now, where do you think a guy like Drummond goes? Because reports are saying he can go to Brooklyn, he can go to the Lakers. The Knicks apparently are kind of highly sought after him.
I think the front runners are the Lakers and the Knicks. What really hurt him to Brooklyn is Claxton's emergence. Claxton's going to be getting 25 minutes plus a night in the playoffs. He'd really have to split time with DeAndre Jordan. He'd probably only be playing 12, 15 minutes a night for Brooklyn.
Yeah.
The Lakers are probably going to offer him, 20, 25 minutes a night. The Knicks are the interesting one because they're really the only team that can offer him a multi-year deal. And they have $15 million in cap space, so they can offer him more money than anybody else.
Yeah.
As of right now, if I had to pick one, I think he's going to the Lakers.
I agree.
If I'm the Knicks, I offer him a 1-year deal. I match whatever deal anybody else is offering him. Here's the thing. The Nets can offer him, like $5.5 million around that area with their mid-level exception. The Lakers can offer him $750K. That's what they can offer. That's all they got. Because they're like hard cap. They're all that. The New York Knicks can offer him $15 million if they want because they have that cap space. So at this point, if you're the Knicks, screw it. Throw $10 million at him. Give him a 1-year, $10 million deal, maybe with a team option or something like that.
Yeah.
See if he fits into that culture. See if Tom Thibodeau can light a fire under him because Drummond still has that potential to be a really good defensive player, a really good impact player on a team. The problem with him has always been he doesn't know his role.
Yeah.
He demands post touches. He demands, offensive sequences to run through him when that's not the player that he is. He is, and always should have been, pretty much a DeAndre Jordan type. Catch your lobs, get your dunks, put up your 10, 12 points a night on 70% shooting, and play defense and rebound. He has always wanted to be more than that, and I think that's where the struggles lie, is he thinks he is a little bit better than that. And I just don't think that's where he is.
Yeah, I think my gut tells me he's going to go to LA. He's going to chase the ring. If he really wants to be in the New York market, maybe he looks at the Nets. Again, like you said, though, you broke it down. I doubt it. The Knicks, on the other hand, I mean, with the resurgence of Julius Randle, Mitchell Robinson's back. You know, you have Nerlens Noel obviously on a 1-year deal. That doesn't matter. Taj
Well,
Gibbs.
that's the thing. Drummond is a better option to Nerlens Noel. You know, he fits with Julius Randle. I think he fits. You know, Randle at the 4, Drummond at the 5, because Randle is carrying that offense. He can't be that defensive player, you know, that he probably could be because he's, you know, using so much energy on the offensive end. So that being said, you put Andre Drummond next to him, that's a defensive stopper, hopefully, that he can, you know, play with.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We got the cat in the shot there. We'll
Yep.
see. You know, we'll see where Drummond goes. I mean, like you said, I think LAL. I think he wants that ring, and the Lakers, they need him desperately right now, at least, to make some kind of impact.
A team I think that could get interested. I don't think he'll go, but a team that should be interested, I think, is Dallas. They can use rim protection. They can always use rim protection in Dallas. So look to them to probably give a call to either Aldridge or Drummond. I don't think either of them are really interested. But you mentioned earlier other big news that came out today. LeBron James out potentially 4 to 6 more weeks. 4 obviously being the minimum, 6 being hopefully the max. And also Kyrie Irving expected to miss 2 or 3 more games due to the birth of his child with his fiance. So congratulations to him.
Remember when Kyrie just like left the Nets for a week? He just
that
was funny.
Didn't like the insurrection. And then everybody, I remember teams saying they should trade him for depth.
They were like, he wants out. He's gone.
He's gone.
Any other moves you want to highlight here? There weren't really any more like major.
Nah, there weren't too many big ones. Yeah, I mean, I go back to the Celtics kind of. You know, Celtics did what the Celtics do. They talked themselves up. They were interested in Vucevic. They were interested in Aaron Gordon. Earlier in the year, they were allegedly really close to a deal for James Harden. You know, they've called about guys like Bradley Beal, and then the trade deadline passes, and you look at their roster, and they got Evan Fournier.
Yikes.
And that's really it. And I really think we need to start talking about Danny Ainge as a GM. Like, is this guy a good GM? At this point, I'm leaning towards no, because any trade that he does, you know, and you can give him all the praise you want for the Brooklyn deal. I think that is a whole lot more about the ineptitude of Billy King, who has not gotten a job since and should not get a job, period. But that's the deal that Ainge made. And anybody would make that deal.
Yeah.
You know, anybody would make that deal. So at this point, I feel like Danny Ainge has set himself up to be this type of GM where unless he feels like he is getting far and away the better end of the deal, he's not going to make the trade. Well, I hate to tell you this, Danny Ainge, but majority of teams are not just going to let you win the trade. They're not just going to let you have assets.
Yeah.
They're not just going to give them to you. Yes, you got away with the Brooklyn trade. It didn't end up as good as it should have because it should have ended in championships.
Yeah.
So I really think, you know, every year this happens, every single year, anytime a big player is talked about, you know, going even back, Anthony Davis, you know, back before then, it was always, oh, the Celtics have all these assets. They can go and get anybody they want. The only time they ever went out and got somebody was Kyrie Irving, and he left.
Yeah.
So I really think we need to start looking at the Celtics as the team that they are, an 8th seed who is struggling, who their best player, their most important player in Marcus Smart, to me, was also included in trade talks.
Yeah.
You know, he's the heart and soul of the team, and they were talking about possibly flipping him for Aaron Gordon. I'm sick of hearing about Boston in these trade deals. I'm tired of hearing about them because it never does. It never happens. You know, the 76ers did get George Hill. It's cool, I guess.
Knicks got Terrence Ferguson.
Knicks got Terrence Ferguson.
But they did give up Ignaz Brazdeikis, which does hurt. It hurts.
The Sixers did give up Tony Bradley. And while that might not sound like a lot, they're rolling into the playoffs at this point with Embiid, and their only other center and big man is Dwight Howard. They don't have anybody else to play those minutes.
Yeah.
So Embiid's going to need to be playing probably 40 minutes a night in the playoffs.
They should call Aldridge, I think, or Drummond.
Yeah. If they could get him on the phone, but I don't think Philly's not a buyout market. It's just not.
Yeah.
So I don't think they get them, but for overall in general, who do I think, won today? Honestly, I think the Brooklyn Nets won. I really do, because Kyle Lowry to Philly, that would have really impacted the East. I think Kyle Lowry to Miami really affects the East. I think if Boston goes out and gets an Aaron Gordon type or a Vucevic, that impacts. But at the end of the day, the biggest move was Oladipo to the Heat, and I just don't know if that really does anything at the top of the championship caliber teams. I really think my takeaway is after, all the trades have been done, after everything's been signed and, everything like that, this still really is the Lakers and the Nets at the top. And I mean, maybe the Nuggets put themselves in that position too with the Aaron Gordon trade. But that's really my takeaway is no team I feel got significantly better.
Yeah, I think for my takeaway is I think the Magic took the right step in rebuilding, and they got a lot of good pieces back. Again, Gary Harris is a good piece. Wendell Carter Jr. is a good piece, plus the 2 first-round picks on top of that. They obviously a rebuild no one wants to go into, but props to them for kind of realizing that they had to.
You got to see the writing on the wall at some point.
Yeah. And in major news, TJ Warren ruled out for the rest of the season. So,
oh wow,
big news out of Indiana.
They're probably out. I think
that's fine. The Knicks will sneak in there.
We'll see in the play-in tournament.
Oh, let's get a Knicks Nets first round.
I would love it. I would love a Knicks Nets first round.
Listen, it was not a travel on Randall when they played a couple weeks ago, was it?
It definitely was. Definitely was.
They should have reviewed it.
Okay, here's my thing too. Is anybody on the Knicks making that shot?
Emmanuel Quickly.
They're down 3 with like 3 seconds left.
Yeah. Emmanuel Quickly would have. That's all I'm saying. Steal the draft.
Oh, by far.
Well,
thank God, because everybody else is going to be talking about how bad Obi Toppin is otherwise.
Oh God, yeah. He's abysmal, and just Knox, Ntilikina, Toppin. Just another. He's gonna be not playing in 2 years on the Knicks bench. So this is classic Knicks move there. But thank you all so much for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts at the Sports Department Pod. Our socials, Sports DEPT Pod. Thank you, Jesse, so much. We have a couple more baseball previews coming out. Jesse's favorite sport. His White Sox had a lot of big news today. And we will see you next time.